Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
Warning, tonight's video contains elements of self-harm. If this is something that's not up your alley or would trigger any sort of PTSD or negative emotions, please feel free to turn this video off now and go watch one of my other mini videos. Otherwise, please enjoy the video tonight. The story is I Wish I Was Colorblind by Casey Were Alien. I know that it's strange to say, but I truly wish I was colorblind right now. Color is an amazing thing. People have studied color and the effects it has on people for years. One of the best examples is probably Baker Miller pink, or more commonly known as drunk tank pink. Baker Miller's pink is a vibrant and unique shade of pink. In the 60s and 70s, a man was conducting research on how color could cause emotional and hormonal changes in the people looking at the color, and he discovered that Baker Miller pink lowered the heart rate, pulse, and respiration of people viewing the color. This started a landslide of jails painting their cells this specific shade of pink. Football teams would paint the opposing team's locker room pink in hopes of calming the athletes down and diminishing their ability to play effectively. What the researcher failed to advertise was that exposing people to Baker Miller pink for longer than 15 minutes would actually cause the person viewing it to experience an increase in violent and aggressive behavior. Jails around the country experienced an increase in attacks and mental health crises. Inmates kept in cells painted Baker Miller pink. It didn't take long before this ubiquitous shade of pink was replaced with more neutral tones. Baker Miller pink isn't the only example of how color affects people. Red and yellow in combination can cause an increase in hunger, which is why they are often used together in fast food logos. Blue-colored streetlights have been shown to decrease crime. Color is something we all experience daily, while not being aware of how it influences us. I've always been interested in psychology, but being from a less than wealthy background, I've never had the opportunity to study it formally. I've been working odd jobs since I was in high school, just trying to keep my head above water. I often found myself scrolling various gig websites, looking for quick work to make an extra few dollars. I had been scrolling for a few hours when I came across an ad that caught my eye. Earn $500 for participating in color study. I had never heard of a color study before, and being half convinced it was another one of those work from home type scams, I clicked the link. The page opened to a brightly colored advertisement. Earn $500 just by looking at colors. We are conducting research on how color affects the human body, and are looking for willing participants for our study. All we ask for is one weekend out of your busy schedule, and your willingness to document all experiences when viewing different colors. If you are interested, please follow the link below and complete our screening process to see if you're eligible to participate in our study. Once you complete the screening process, our researchers will reach out to you and schedule a weekend that works for you. At the bottom of the ad was a link from the local university. Slowly, my worries about it being a scam drifted away. It didn't take me but a few seconds to decide to click the link and fill out the screener. I stared at my bare apartment and imagined what an extra $500 could get me. That could have been a few months of groceries and a new pair of shoes. It might not seem like a lot to other people, but when you grow up destitute, $500 is a godsend. To my surprise, I received an email response within 5 minutes of hitting submit. A researcher named Edith had emailed me asking if I was available to come in that weekend. I quickly responded and let her know I would be able to come in, and asked her when I would be able to collect the money. She assured me that I would receive the cash as soon as I complete the study. Before I knew it, it was Saturday, and I was following my GPS to an isolated corner of the university's campus. The building was almost ran down. Several windows were broken, and ivy crept up the faded brick facade. I started to feel a little uneasy as I climbed the crumbling steps, but I reassured myself that researchers aren't known for spending money on frivolous things like a building's appearance. Once inside, a petite woman, I assumed was Edith, ushered me into a shabby waiting room. She quickly handed me a clipboard with different consent forms. I filled them out as she explained that the experiment required me to spend a weekend in a room painted a certain color. They'd provide food and a change of clothing, and there was a bathroom connected to the room I would be staying in that was also the same color, so as to not break the immersion. All I would have to do is stay in the room for the weekend and document any thoughts and any emotions I felt. I followed her down the hall to my assigned room while thinking to myself that this was the easiest 500 I had ever made. I wish I would have known how wrong I could be. The rhythmic clicking of her heels stopped in front of a dark brown door with a glass window. Below this window was a small hatch, which looked like those you see in a solitary confinement cell for passing a prisoner their food. She studied me before turning the tarnished brass knob. The door opened to a purple room. The purple was unsettling to say the least. It wasn't particularly deep or vibrant. It was almost dusty with harsh gray and blue undertones. The room was cloaked in this aged lavender shade, and in it sat a small desk and cot. On the far wall was a door I assumed led into the bathroom. There was a single pendant light hanging from the ceiling. Every inch of this room, sparing the light bulb, was covered in this purple. I think Edith noticed my discomfort because she quickly started prattling about a security camera I failed to notice. I know I should have listened to her, but the purple was all-consuming. The longer I stared at it, the more anxious I felt. The color seemed to swirl around me, and everything seemed to disappear for a moment. Swirls of purple seemed to engulf me. I came back to the present with a jump as Edith touched my arm and said my name. I tried to downplay my startled reaction as she stared at me for a moment. Cautiously, she handed me a notebook and a few pencils that matched the color of the room. Only the lead of the pencil seemed to lack the oppressive purple. I stared at the point of one of the pencils as Edith said that there were clothes for me in the bathroom, and that once she left, she was going to lock the door until the experiment ended Sunday evening. I stared at her as she asked if I had any questions. As I shook my head, I could see her staring at me from the corner of my eye. She looked almost sad, but knowing what I know now, I'm convinced it was a look of guilt. Before she left, I changed my clothes and got into the mold purple uniform they had provided. As I handed her my clothes, she gave me a solemn nod and exited the room, locking it behind her. I appraised my new surroundings as the silence set in, wondering about what I had managed to get myself into. I questioned if it was really worth 500 to be trapped in this purple room with no human contact. It was only for a few days. I kept reassuring myself. For the first time, I began to question what kind of study I was participating in. Surely it wasn't because they developed a new pigment. If that were the case, they would be testing various applications and its durability, right? But what was the purpose of coating the entire room and everything in it like this? What did the researchers seek to learn? I brushed the thoughts aside as I sat on the bed. Whatever the purpose wasn't my concern. All I had to do was exist in this space and write down my thoughts, and I would get paid. Who was I to question their motives? That money was going to be a godsend, and I chided myself for daring to wonder. The springs in the mattress creaked as I sat on the bed. This was going to be an uncomfortable weekend, but it would be well worth it. I stood, stretching as I looked at the room. The purple began to feel suffocating as I stared at the room. I had noticed it before, but the furnishing, the bathroom, the wall, everything was matte. Normally, when you look at your room, you see different textures, whether it be the texture of the wall compared to the carpet or smooth bed sheets reflecting light differently than a pad of paper. That wasn't the case in this room. Everything was a stark matte. Nothing was more or less shiny or reflective than anything else. If it weren't for the singular light dangling in the middle of the room, causing shadows to fall across the wall and floors, I would have been convinced there was no furniture in this room at all. Even the security camera casing was coated in the purple that surrounded me. I sat at the desk and looked down at the paper. It was barely discernible from the smooth texture of the desktop. I tapped the pencil lightly on the desk as I began to wonder if I should start writing then, or if I would need to give myself time to adjust. The tapping gave way to a small ringing as the pencil hit the metal desk. Being easily distracted, I found myself drumming out a rhythm on the desk. Before long, I started to wonder what sounds everything made. Not being able to see what the few items in the room were made of led me to touching and tapping on everything. I lost myself in the various taps and thuds I was creating. Closing my eyes as I swayed rhythmically through the room, I found myself spinning and undulating as I forgot the whole purpose of me being there. My temporary bliss was shattered when I heard the clang of metal behind me. I opened my eyes and the weight of my reality came crashing down on me. I tried to orientate myself in the endless sea of purple. As I looked around, I saw a purple tray seated on the door's hatch. The researchers had seen it fit to serve my dinner. I can't say I was particularly hungry, but I walked over to the door to grab the tray anyways. The purple danced around me as I sat at the table to apprise my meal. Somehow they managed to dye the food purple. I couldn't even tell what it was supposed to be. There were several purple blobs scattered on the tray, and none of them managed to look appealing. Even the plastic silverware they provided was the same purple. Not only was I surrounded by this ominous purple, it would be inside of me. What the hell kind of experiment requires you to eat food dyed to match the walls? What exactly had I signed up for? I pushed the tray away from me without eating and started writing down my thoughts on the paper they had provided. The graphite marks seemed lost as the purple overwhelmed the page. My anxiety seemed to increase with every faint line I put down. Overwhelmed, I tossed the pencil onto the table and put my hands over my eyes. This purple was starting to bear down on me and my sanity at this point. I walked over to the bed to lay down. I looked up at the ceiling. The light in the room started to flicker. As it flickered, clouds of purple shadow seemed to dance around me. I slammed my eyes shut, trying to escape the jarring shade. Even with my eyes shut, all I could see was purple. I buried my face in the pillow and hoped that sleep would soon take me and that I would dream of anything other than purple. I don't know how long I laid there waiting for sleep. Once I did manage to drift off to sleep, it was entirely restless. I wish the tossing and turning was the worst part, but it wasn't. My dreams were haunted by purple. I dreamt of walking down the street, exploring a part of town I had never been in. From the edge of my vision, the purple started to creep in, bleeding into my dreamscape. Homes and sidewalks started to stain with a dastardly color. I began to run, but no matter how fast I ran, the purple continued to pursue me. It didn't take long before my dream was engulfed in that hideous shade of purple. I collapsed on the now purple ground as it swirled around me. It began creeping up my body, and nothing I did managed to rid myself of the purple. I screamed as purple tendrils wrapped around my face. I woke up sweating and out of breath on the bed, still locked in the room. I shuddered, silently weeping as I stared out into the all-consuming purple. I steadied myself as I went to write my dream down on the paper. Once I finished, I found myself just staring at the purple room. The smell of whatever kind of food assaulted my nostrils. My stomach flipped violently, and I ran to the bathroom to vomit. My body heaved and shuddered as I reached up vile into the violently purple porcelain bowl. I was filled with abject horror when I looked into the toilet and saw my vomit was a sticky shade of purple. I flung myself backwards, smacking my head on the sink. I laid in the hellish purple bathroom for what felt like ages. My vision faded in and out as my head throbbed. With every blink, the world around me seemed to shift. I could see figures and shadows dancing in the purple haze. Tiredness and pain slowly overcame me, and as I felt my eyes flutter shut, I could swear I saw a figure standing over me. I woke up, what must have been hours later. I crawled my way out of the bathroom slowly. As I used the bed to stand myself up, I glanced over and saw the hatch on the entry door open, a new tray of food sitting on it. The first tray of food was still sitting where I had left it on the table. Glancing at the camera in the corner of the room, I wondered if there would even be a reason the researchers would come into the room. What were the chances I was actually being watched? I swapped the trays of food, leaving the old one on the hatch door. Once again, my meal consisted of monotonous globs of purple. I couldn't even discern the texture or what they could have been. They could be serving things no normal person would be willing to eat, and I would have no idea. The globs gave no hint as to what they were. Just staring at the tray, managed to drain what little appetite I had. My stomach ached with hunger, but something deep inside me churned with suspicion about the mysterious blobs. No matter what, I couldn't let the purple get inside me. There was no concept of time in the room. There was no windows, no clock, nothing to help you gauge how much time had passed. The only consistent thing was the delivery of food trays. I spent my time sketching, moving around the cell-like room as much as I could. I practiced what little bit of yoga I knew, trying to keep myself calm. Meditation, exercise, even drawing on what little bits of paper I could spare, nothing seemed to quell my unease. I found myself at the sink splashing water in my face when things got so much worse. The water from the sink was refreshing, and shockingly didn't seem to be purple. I carefully cupped it in my mouth, drinking it with glee, as I relished the existence of something in the room that wasn't purple. I was so relieved that the water was clear, I just sat on the floor across from the faucet and watched it run. Just the sound of the water hitting the sink basin was like music to my ears. Suddenly inspired, I ran to the table in the room and grabbed all the paper the researchers had left me. I scrambled back to the sink and stuffed the paper in the drain. I needed to save this water. I needed something that was real. Something that wasn't purple. I played in the sink basin like a child whose mother looked away for a moment too long. I watched as the clear water as it started to overflow the sides, and that must have been when the lack of food and stress hit me. As I was turning to shut the bathroom door, the room started to go dark, and my body hit the floor. I don't remember having any dreams while I was unconscious. Everything was just dark until I woke up. The darkness was like pure ecstasy. It was an escape from purple. I don't know how long I was out for, but as I woke up, I rolled over and felt the water lap in my face. My vision faded in and out. I shakily pulled myself up on my hands and knees, and as I did, I stared at my hands in abject horror. A sea of purple rippled around my waist. The once clear water was now stained that offensive purple. I looked down at myself. Everywhere that water touched me was now that sickly gray purple. Panicked, I looked around the room. The water was now ankle deep. I lurched upright, sprinting and sloshing to the sink to slam the tap off. I ripped the purple uniform off and inspected my body. My skin looked mottled and tie-dyed with stains and swaths of purple spreading across me. I started rubbing my skin as hard as I could. The purple just seemed to set in and grow deeper in color. I stumbled into the room as I grasped at my skin, slamming into the table and lurching the tray of food into the air. The alien-like globs of food crashed against me. As the tray clanged against the floor, I panicked and started to try to scrape the blobs off of me. Everywhere the food touched stained an even darker purple. Everything was becoming purple. I looked around the room, desperate for an escape from the purple. I looked at the tray on the floor and found the plastic silverware that had been sent with my meal. Out of pure desperation, I grabbed the knife on the floor. I scraped at my skin, with it trying desperately to get the purple off me. Even as I felt the plastic break the skin and warm ooze of blood began to flow, all I could see was purple. The blood running down my body dripped in a sickly shade. I flew into a rage. I took the fork and ripped the seams of the pillow the researchers provided me. Clouds of purple cotton came tumbling out of the delicate fabric casing. I shrieked as I began to stab the mattress, breaking the fork as the purple springs and purple film became exposed. I threw the fork aside and cried into my hands. My existence was purple. There was no escaping the purple. As I sobbed, I remembered Edith monitoring the cameras. Nothing I had done or experienced at this point had brought the researchers to my aid. But they would have to do something if they could no longer view me. I felt weak and shaky as I grabbed a chair and drug it to the corner where I noticed the camera. I climbed it slowly and began to pull at the camera. My strength was quickly drained as the blood continued to flow out of my wounds. The purple hid the streaks and drips. The only way I could tell I was bleeding was by the sticky, warm feeling it left as I moved. Frustrated with my inability to pull the camera down, I jumped off the chair and grabbed the food tray. I scraped the remaining food globs off it, and once again climbed the chair, leaning back as far as I could without falling. I began to swing the tray at the camera. The camera started to shift, and the lens started to shatter. I heard scrambling at the door when I leaned back for my final swing. I must have lost more blood than I thought. As I reached back, my body suddenly felt heavy, and darkness clouded the corners of my vision. Time seemed to slow down as I lurched forward to deliver the camera its death blow. I looked to the door and saw Edith and several other people in white coats come rushing in the room as the tray made contact with the camera for the last time. I heard their concerned shrieks as my world went dark and my body hit the floor below where I'd been standing. I'm not sure what happened. When I woke up next, I found myself in a hospital room. My arms and legs were bandaged, and there was an IV hooked into my arm. I looked around the room in amazement. The world had color again. The walls were tan, the TV was black, even my bandages were stained with red. The heart monitor beeped and showed a bright green line zigzagging across the screen. I sighed with confusion and relief as I leaned back against the pillow of my bed. I began to wonder if I had been in an accident and if the purple was just a side effect of the pain medication. After taking a moment to appreciate the vibrance of the world around me, I noticed an envelope on the table that held water for me. I took a sip of the cool, clear liquid and slowly reached for the envelope. As I opened it, I was shocked to see $500. As I pulled out the cash and looked at it, a dull, dusky purple powder fell from the envelope. The powder fell on my hospital gown, and the sticky purple hue began to spread. Tendrils of purple began to envelop me. As I screamed, several nurses ran in, injecting something into my IV. I felt my consciousness slip away as purple crowded the edges of my vision. Tonight's story was by Casey Raelian. It was titled, I Wish I Were Colorblind. If you enjoyed this story, please let her know. The links to her Reddit, as well as all of her other social medias, will be in the description below. Hey, did you know I have merch? Well, I do. And if you'd like to walk around, representing my realm and gaining new travelers, the links to my merch store, as well as all my other social medias, are in the description below in my link tree. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to all my lovely Patreons. To 42 Reads, Seraphine, the Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Nightmare's Mistress, Hair Raising Narratives, Lichen Trucker, and Nathaniel Nelson. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers but I'll light my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. The support is always appreciated but never expected. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're new, and ding that bell for all future content, as it really helps this channel grow and pushes this video into the algorithm.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.